The Battle of Dunbar, fought on April 27, 1296, was a defining moment in the opening chapter of the First War of Scottish Independence. The origins of the conflict trace back to 1286, when the sudden death of King Alexander III of Scotland left the kingdom without a direct male heir. His only surviving descendant, Margaret, the Maid of Norway, was a child and died en route to Scotland in 1290. This left the Scottish throne vacant, leading to a succession crisis that drew the attention of Edward I of England. Edward, a powerful monarch with expansionist ambitions, offered to mediate the selection of Scotland's next ruler, but his involvement was far from impartial. By demanding fealty from the Scottish nobles, he laid the groundwork for asserting his overlordship over Scotland. John Balliol was ultimately selected as king in 1292, but his reign was fraught with challenges. Nicknamed Toon Tabard, Empty Coat, by his detractors, Balliol struggled to maintain authority under Edward's domineering influence. The breaking point came when Edward demanded Scottish military support for his war in France. This demand outraged the Scots, who instead sought an alliance with France, formalized in the Auld Alliance of 1295. Enraged by what he viewed as treachery, Edward I launched a full-scale invasion of Scotland in 1296, marking the beginning of open hostilities. The campaign began with the brutal sack of Berwick-upon-Tweed, where Edward's forces massacred thousands of Scottish inhabitants in a show of ruthless power. With Berwick secured, Edward turned his sights northward. The strategic focus shifted to Dunbar Castle, held by Scottish forces loyal to Balliol. The castle's location near the English border made it a critical stronghold, and its capture would provide Edward with a secure foothold in southeastern Scotland. The Scottish army, commanded by John Comyn, Earl of Buchan, and other nobles loyal to Balliol, marched to confront the English near Dunbar. Despite their numerical advantage, the Scots were poorly trained and lacked the experience and discipline of Edward's professional army. The English force, led by John de Warenne, Earl of Surrey, was seasoned and well organized, giving Edward's side a significant edge even before the battle began. The engagement unfolded disastrously for the Scots. Positioned on high ground near Spotsmere, the Scottish army initially had a defensible position. However, a critical misunderstanding proved their undoing. When the English forces maneuvered as if retreating, the Scots misinterpreted this as a rout and broke ranks to pursue them. This rash decision left the Scottish lines in complete disarray. The English, feigning retreat as part of a deliberate tactic, quickly regrouped and launched a devastating counterattack. Their cavalry and infantry, disciplined and heavily armed, tore through the scattered Scottish troops. The resulting melee was a one-sided slaughter, with many Scots killed outright and thousands taken prisoner. Dunbar Castle fell to the English shortly after the battle, and the wider implications for Scotland were profound. Edward's forces swept through the lowlands virtually unopposed, consolidating English control over key territories. John Balliol was captured and publicly humiliated. He was stripped of his royal insignia in a symbolic ceremony of abdication. Known as the Toon Tabard incident, this act epitomized Edward's utter contempt for Balliol and his claim to kingship. Balliol was imprisoned in the Tower of London before being exiled to France. Edward's conquest culminated in the removal of the Stone of Scone, a powerful emblem of Scottish kingship. Transported to Westminster Abbey, the stone was placed beneath Edward's coronation throne, a deliberate act meant to signify England's dominion over Scotland. This humiliation, however, did not extinguish Scottish resistance. While the Battle of Dunbar was a catastrophic defeat, it marked only the beginning of a protracted struggle. Figures like William Wallace and Robert the Bruce would later rise to lead the fight for Scotland's independence, drawing inspiration from the sacrifices of those who had fallen at places like Dunbar. The Battle of Dunbar thus stands as both a military and political watershed. It underscored the stark disparities between the disorganized Scottish forces and the disciplined English army, as well as Edward I's relentless determination to subjugate Scotland. Although it resulted in the temporary collapse of Scottish resistance, the defeat sowed the seeds of a broader national awakening. The memory of the battle, steeped in both tragedy and defiance, became a rallying point for future generations determined to reclaim Scotland's sovereignty.